right, so these are the equations that describe a certain economy. We've been given the production function, which is a function of labor, okay, and the marginal product of labor too has been given. And then we have our labor supply function, which is a function of the real wage and then the marginal tax rate. We've been given our key, the money supply, and then the demand for loanable funds, which is the investment function, and then the supply of loanable funds, which is the savings function. Okay, so we have to use this information to answer the questions that follow. Okay, so we are first supposed to find real wage. Okay, for real wage is determined in the labor market. So when you go to the labor market, we have equilibrium when labor demand is equal to labor supply. But from the question, we're not giving labor demand, so we will have to find a demand for labor. Okay, we'll have to find a demand for labor. So we know that we can get our demand for labor when we equate marginal product of labor to the real wage. Okay, so from the question, we're giving marginal product of labor as 20 minus 0.5 N. Okay, 0.5 N. So we equate this to W over P. Then we make N the subject. Okay, so we send minus 0.5 to the other side and then W over P to the So we'll have 0.5 N equals 20 minus W over P. Okay, so if you want to find N, you divide through by 0.5. So our ND should be 20 over half is 40, and then 1 over half is 2. So we have the demand for labor function to be 40 minus 2 W over P. Then our labor supply function, as it was given in the question, was a function of the marginal tax rate. It was 1 minus the small t, and the t was given as 0.2. Okay, so just substitute your t equals 0.2 into the NS equation. So we'll have 20 by 1 minus 0.2, which is 0.8. So 0.8 times 20 should give us 16. So this becomes our labor supply function, which is now a function of real wage, only real wage. So for the labor market to be in equilibrium, ND should be equal to NS. Okay, your demand for labor should be equal to your supply of labor. So from the simple calculation that we did, our demand for labor function was 40 minus 2 times the real wage, and then this is our labor supply function, 4 plus 16 times the real wage. So here we have a linear equation in terms of the real wage. So just solve for real wage. Just solve for your real wage, and then you are getting 2. So from the labor market, our real wage, which is the W over P, is equal to 2. So now that we have real wage, we can go to either the labor demand function or the labor supply function to find our N. Okay, so just put W over P equals 2 into either N or NS. So that is what we have here. Taking the ND function, we have 40 minus 2 by W over P, and our W over P is 2. So we have 40 minus 2 by 2, which is 40 minus 4, and we are getting 36. So this is our ND, our N. Now, because ND is equal to NS, this is supposed to be our N. N is equal to 36. Okay, N is equal to 36. Then the third question, the III, we're supposed to find the real output. So just go to the production function, which is a function of N. Now that we have N, we can just substitute the value of N into the Y function. And Y was 20 by N minus 1 over 4 N squared. So wherever you see N, put your 36. So we have 20 by 36 minus 1 over 4 by 36 squared. So if this is correct, we are getting Y to be 396. So this is your real output. Okay, just put your N into the production function. At times, the production function will be a function of both N and K, but K will be held constant and the value of K to be given. So when you get here, just do your substitution, and then the value that you get should be your real output. Then we are to find our P, the general price level, okay? From the equation of exchange, MV is supposed to be equal to PY, okay? We're not giving V, we're giving K, but we know that V is equal to 1 divided by K, okay? V is equal to 1 divided by K. So our V should be equal to 1 over K was given as 0.25, okay? So V should be equal to 1 over 0.25, and that should give us 4. And that should give us 4. So from the equation of exchange, from the question, the money supply was 297. Okay, so 297 by V, which is now 4, should be equal to P times our real output, which we just had 296. So now we have a linear equation in terms of P. Okay, in terms of P. So if you want to find P, you just divide through by 396. So this is the value of P. Okay, this is the general price level. And then for V, we're to find the nominal wage. Okay, we know that the real wage is W over P, which is equal to 2. So if you want to find your nominal wage, just do cross multiplication, and your nominal wage should be equal to 2 times P. So W equals 2 times P, and this is the value of P. So finding the product of these two numbers, we are getting 6. So your nominal wage is equal to 6. Okay, your nominal wage is equal to 6. So that is the first part. And then we are to find equilibrium interest rates. The interest rate is, real interest rate is determined in the loanable funds market. And there too, we have equilibrium when the demand for loanable funds equals supply of loanable funds, okay? So the demand for loanable funds is given as the investment function. This was given in the question. And then the supply of loanable funds too is given as the savings function. So just equate the two. You have a linear equation in terms of R. Just make out a subject and we are getting 5. Okay, so we've been able to do the first part of the question. We've been able to find W over P, N, Y, P, W, and then our R. Okay, then our R. Then for the B part, the policy was that they've reduced the marginal tax rate from 0.2 to 0.1. So we're supposed to go through everything again to see the effect of this policy. Okay, so from the equations that were given, the marginal tax rate has an effect on the labor supply function. So you go back to the labor supply function and then now insert T is equal to 0.1. Initially it was 0.2. Now we are using 0.1, okay? So this was the labor supply function for, and then we have our 20 into bracket 1 minus the small t times W over P, okay? Times W over P. So now 1 minus 0.1 is supposed to give us 0.9. So 0.9 by 20 will give us 18. So this is the new labor supply function, okay? So to get the new equilibrium, we equate this new labor supply function to the old labor demand function. Okay, there was no change in the labor demand function. So equating the two, we'll have there's the old labor demand function. This is the new labor supply function. So we'll have a linear equation in terms of real wage. Solve for real wage, and then we are getting 1.8. Whenever there's a reduction in the marginal tax rate, it causes a reduction in the real wage. Okay, so now real wage is 1.8. Okay, 1.8. So if you want to find your new N, right? So for us to get the new N, okay, for us to get the new N, we just put the new W over P into either the old demand for labor function or the new labor supply function. So using the demand for labor function, we are getting 40 minus 2 by 1.8. So that should be 36.4. Okay, so the policy of reducing the marginal tax rate has caused an increase in N. Okay, has caused an increase in N. So if you want to find your new Y, you go to the production function, you go and put in your new n, okay? The production function was 20 by n minus 1 over 4 by n squared. So put your n is equal to 36.4 there. So do that and hopefully you are getting something like this. So the reduction in the marginal tax rate has caused an increase in the output level. Okay, that is your new y. Then for our p, our new p, you go back to the equation of exchange, okay? The V is for M is 297. Then this is the P that we are looking for. And this is our new Y. So we use the new Y. So you have a linear equation in terms of P. Solve for P and hopefully you get P to be 2.994. Okay, so there's a reduction in price, right? There's a reduction in price because of the change in the marginal tax rate. There will be no change in real interest rate because the change in the marginal tax rate has nothing to do with the loanable funds market. Yeah, Michael. Michael, is your hand up? All right, so is the third question that we are looking at. Okay, we've not started with the first one. Daniel, do you have a question? I think your network is bad. Check your network and come back again.
Yes, please. Shall I go on?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. So I wanted to ask, why did you insert the change in the marginal something that they give? Why did you insert it in the supply function? Why not the demand function?
Oh, because the tax rate is seen in the labor supply function, not the labor demand function. It's in the labor supply function. Can you see it here?
Yes, I get it. I can see it there.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right, so that is the effect of the first policy where they reduced the marginal tax rate, okay? The second policy was a bond financed increase in government expenditure of 28 units, okay? So this one will affect the loanable funds markets. The demand for loanable funds is the sum of investment and then the bond financed government spending. Okay, so if now we are introducing government spending, then we add the government spending to the investment function. Okay, so now the demand for loanable funds will be this investment function, which is 100 minus 5R. Then we add the government spending, which is 28. So this is going to be the new demand for loanable funds function, okay, 128 minus 5R. So to get our equilibrium real interest rate, we just equate this new demand for loanable funds to the old supply for loanable funds, which is the savings function, okay? So equate 128 minus 5R to 30 plus 9R. You have a linear equation in terms of R, solve for R, and we are getting R to be 7, okay? We are getting R to be 7. So for the second policy, when they increase the government spending, you see that it has no effect on the labor market. And as a result, there will be no effect on the product market too. So W over P doesn't change, Y doesn't change, N doesn't change, okay? But because it's affecting the loanable funds market, it's causing an increase in the real interest rates, okay? Initially, I think it was 5. Now it's 7. Yes, someone's hand is up. iPhone.
Please, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Please, the equation, after the government increased its expenditure, the
Yeah.
I plus the J minus T, which is the deficit. I feel like the deficit is like the government spending minus the taxation. But what they gave was 28 units and it's not in monetary value. So how do you add units to an investment, which is money?
Who said investment is money?
Like they invest in, I feel like the government deficits, they were like how much the government spending exceeding its taxation.
Okay,
So I feel
see,
spending is like monetary value.
no, this is not just government spending. No. It's a bond financed government spending. Okay, the government can spend, but it wouldn't be financed through the bonds market. Okay, so when you go to the loanable funds market, when you go to the loanable funds market, without the activity of the government, the demand for loanable funds is just investment. Okay, but when the government spends and it tries to fund this spending through the loanable funds market, that is where we add that spending to the initial investment. Okay. So
the financing can either be in units or in monetary value. It doesn't matter.
No. Don't even think about whether the thing is in monetary values or just. But money too is a unit.
Yeah.
Money too is a unit, so it doesn't matter.
Okay.
All right, so this is the first part. Questions like this are always in the past school, okay? So just get the past questions and then solve as many computational questions as you can. I think it's just this one and then the ISLM, okay? So before they teach you that one, just master this one. The questions are almost always the same, okay? I think the last part of this question was to compare the relative effectiveness of the two policies. For the first one, when they reduced the marginal tax rate, there was real effect. There was a change in the real wage, and as a result, there was a change in the units of labor, and then there was a change in real output. Okay, so the first policy was able to cause an increase in the output level. But for government spending, which is financed through the loanable finance market, it has no real effect. It doesn't affect the labor market. So it doesn't affect the level of output. That is why this group of economists, they believe that government activity wasn't needed. They even deemed it harmful. Okay, so when you change government spending through and then you try to finance it through the loanable funds market, it has no real effect. So if we have to choose between these two policies, then we'll have to go for the first one. The first one was relatively effective. Okay, the first one was relatively effective. Now, for the first question and the second question, I can only show you what you have to do. If I have to spell everything out, I think we just write everything and that could cause issues. So I will just use the diagrams to show you what you have to do. Okay. Ocean, your hand is up.
Yeah, please, can you hear me out?
Yes.
Please, can you go over what you just repeated, like the last part?
Well, for the about the relative effectiveness.
Yeah.
Why did they want such policies? Let's check the question again. The B part, you see, in order to increase real output, okay, they wanted to increase the small y. And from the two policies, I think it was only the change in the marginal tax rate that was able to achieve that goal. Okay, reduction in the marginal tax rate was able to raise the real output, but the change in government spending, which was financed through the bonds market wasn't able to get this goal. And as a result, we say that the first policy was relatively effective.
Okay, okay.
All right. For the first part, we had to just show why they saw money to be a veil. Okay, at times this is how they ask the question, or I think they stated like there's no effect of monetary policy. Okay, what you need to know is that these are the diagrams that you have to draw. First, when you increase money supply, what happens to the aggregate demand curve? Okay, we get our aggregate demand curve by looking out for combinations of price and then the output level that are consistent with the equation of exchange. Okay, whenever you increase money supply, that's when the central bank goes for an expansionary monetary policy, it causes an outward shift in the AD curve. Okay, so whenever you increase money supply, the aggregate demand curve will keep on shifting to the right. And we know that under this system, we have a vertical AS curve. Okay, the aggregate supply curve is vertical. So now what happens when we keep on increasing money supply? What is the effect of an expansionary monetary policy on the level of real output? Let's start from this equilibrium point where the money supply was just M1. This is our aggregate demand curve and our vertical AS curve. So the general price level was P1 and then output level was Y1. Now, if you increase money supply, it will only cause the aggregate demand curve to shift. When it shifts to YD M2, because the AS curve is vertical, there will be no change in Y. The next equilibrium is Y2, which is exactly the same as what Y1. What we can see here is that it's only causing an increase in the general price level. Okay, so when you increase the money supply, it doesn't change the output level. It only increases the general price level. Now, if we have to increase money supply again, aggregate demand will shift again, and then price will go up. So if you want to change the output level, then changing the money supply won't be of any help. It's only causing an increase in the general price level. So whenever you increase money supply, just expect inflation. There will be no change in the output level. That is why they stated that monetary policy wasn't effective at all under this system. Okay, so monetary policy has no effect on the output level. And someone is asking why the AS curve is vertical. This one, it means we really have to go back to go and look at the relationship between price and then labor supply and labor demand before we get back here. Okay, let me just draw this. I don't know if you remember this diagram. When you go to the labor market, we are drawing the demand and then the supply curves as a function of as a function of the nominal wage. Okay, so this is price, this is our N. Okay, this is ND, this is NS. Okay, let's use this as a function of P, this two as a function of P. So this should be our nominal wage. Now, if there's an increase in price, okay, if there's an increase in price, and then I'm sure we all know that when you go to the labor market, it's firms that demand for labor services, okay? So if you are a firm and there's an increase in the price of your commodity, then you try to produce more just to take advantage of the increase in price. So by doing so, you tend to increase your demand for labor, okay? That's when price goes up, okay? You tend to increase your demand for labor. And then when you go to the labor market, we have individuals who are giving out their labor services. And then they are not just interested in the money that they get from working. They are interested in the railway, the quantity of goods and services that they can buy, which depends on the price level. So if there's an increase in price, it means that after you offer your labor service, the benefit, which is the quantity of goods that you are going to get, has reduced. So in the eyes of the individual, working isn't even profitable. Why should I be working and then what I'm supposed to get from whatever service that I'm giving, I am not getting. So when price goes up, it discourages individuals to offer their labor services. So this will cause the labor supply curve to shift to the left. There will be a reduction even at the same nominal wage. So this is going to be our new equilibrium point. And looking at this, there's no change in N. It is only causing an increase in wage. Okay, so if price goes up and wage too goes up, it means that there will be no change in railway. So there will be no change in N. And know that Y is a function of N. Okay, your output level is a function of N. So if there's no change in N, then there will be no change in Y. And the AS curve to give the relationship between price and then Y. So price has changed, but there's no change in Y. So if price should increase from P1 to P2, Y will still be constant. So there will be no change in Y. If we try to increase price again, this same thing will happen again. Demand will increase, the labor supply will decrease, but still N will still be constant. There will be no change in N. So if you keep on increasing price, there will be no change in Y. That is why the AS curve is vertical. I hope you understand. Right, so and now that we know that the AS curve is always vertical, whenever you increase your money supply, it will only cause a rightward shift in the aggregate demand curve, which will cause no change in Y, just an increase in the general price level. So there's a statement under this system that inflation is just a monetary phenomenon. If you have an economy and there's a persistent increase in the general price level, then it is being caused by the central bank because they are increasing the money supply. And then the follow-up question was, under what condition did they deem money supply as important? The thing is that they just saw it as a medium of exchange. We just use it to buy goods and services. So the commodity that we use to buy goods and services can be used to control the general price level. So just assuming that you have an economy and the prices are so high, if the central bank wants to reduce this inflation, it can just reduce the quantity of money in the system. We are using money to buy these goods. So if we don't have money, there's going to be a reduction in demand. So with a constant supply, the general price level will fall. So they could only use it to control inflation because they just saw it as a medium of exchange. But if you want to change your output level, then there's no way you can use monetary policy, okay? So with this understanding and the diagrams, you can try to put something down first you talk about what the policy is, then draw the diagrams, and then you give an interpretation of the diagram. Don't just draw it and leave it. Okay. I've worked with Dr. Bremer before. We were marking an IA question, and he took one paper, he was using it to show us how to mark it. And the person was just drawing the diagrams without saying anything. And we're just supposed to cancel it. He said the diagrams cannot just explain themselves. Okay. So you have to make sure that you draw the diagram and then you give an interpretation of what is going on in the diagram. Okay. Right. So this is for the reason why monetary policy wasn't effective. Okay. And then the second question too was why they saw a bond financed fiscal policy to be ineffective. Okay. This is the bonds market. Before the introduction of government activity, this was the equilibrium point because investment was just the demand side for the loanable funds. Okay, and then the supply side was the savings function. So this is the initial equilibrium point with the interest rate R0, and savings was exactly equal to investment. Now they've introduced the bond finance government spending. So this is our new demand for loanable funds. Okay, so because of the introduction of the GM-T, there's an increase in interest rates. Okay, this GM-T is calculated by this horizontal distance. Okay, the sum of A and then B from this side to this side is our GM-T. Okay, now because we've added this GM-T, interest rate has increased, and we know that investment is a negative function of interest rate. So whenever there's an increase in interest rate, it causes a reduction in investment. So initially, this is the level of investment. But because of the increase in interest rates, investment has reduced from I0 to 1 to I1. So this distance B is a reduction in investment. Okay. Now, because of the increase in interest rates, there's an increase in savings because savings is a positive function of interest rate. So whenever interest rate increases, there's an increase in savings. So the savings will increase from S0 to S1. That is the distance A. And we know that your income is either consumed or saved. So if there's an increase in savings, it means there's a reduction in the level of consumption. So if this A corresponds to an increase in savings, it automatically corresponds to a reduction in consumption. So we know that our Y is the sum of consumption, investment, and then government spending. And initially, there was an increase in government spending, just assuming the effect on Y was 50. Because of the increase in interest rates, investment has fallen by, say, 30, and consumption too has fallen by, say, 20, which means that there will be no change in Y at all. The latter fall in investment and consumption will just rule out the initial increase in the government spending. This is what we call the crowding out. And under this system, we have 100% crowding out, which means that whenever you increase government spending, we will have an equal fall in private spending, partly from private investment and then partly from consumption. So whenever you use bonds to finance government spending, you have no effect on Y, except that there will be changes in the component of Y. One, J will go up, but C will fall, and then investment will fall, which means that there will be no change at all in the Y. That is why they stated that a bond finance government spending wasn't effective. Okay, so if you want to increase your output level, don't use bond finance government spending. Okay, so this is why this one increase in government spending, which is financed through the loanable funds markets, will have no effect. Audrey.
Yeah, hello.
Yes. Yeah.
How about the induced interest rate?
There is because of the increase in interest rates is causing a fall in investment. That's what we call the interest rate induced fall in investment. Interest rate induced fall in investment. When you increase government spending, it causes an increase in the real interest rate. That is why the level of investment is falling. So that's what we call interest rate induced fall in investment. Okay, the reason why interest rate has to increase is that when you increase your gen, it means that now we have excess demand for loanable funds. It means that we have excess demand for bonds. Okay, if you have excess demand for bonds, the price of bonds will go up. And I'm sure you know there's an inverse relationship between the interest rate and the price of bonds. So when there's excess demand for bonds, the price of bonds will go up. The price of bonds, we have excess demand for loanable funds, so we'll have excess supply of bonds. So the price of bonds will fall, and then the interest rate will go up. That is why we are seeing an increase in interest rate. So when interest rate increases, it will cause investment to fall and cause savings to increase. So because of the increase in savings, it will cause a reduction in consumption. And because of the total crowding out, the initial effect of the increase in government spending will just be cancelled by the latter fall in private spending, which is partly coming from falling investment and then falling individual consumption. Okay. The meeting is almost over, but the second part of this question was, under what circumstance did they deem fiscal policy to be effective? That is when they use the marginal tax rate. Okay, if you reduce the marginal tax rate, it causes an increase in labor supply. Okay, so there will be an increase in N, and whenever N increases, it will cause an increase